Hey guys, Tim with Defense Mechanisms. Want to take a little time today to share some kind of lessons observed from a recent class that Jesse and I taught with our friend Nick at our Defensive Elements training company down in Muncie, Indiana. We taught our Anatomy of Structures class, which is effectively it's our introduction to CQB. It's two-man structure clearance class. And for most of the students there, it was about a third law enforcement, two-thirds armed citizens. And for most of the students there, it was one of their first trainings outside of the flat range. And so we see a lot of things, a lot of kind of flat range related training scars in a class like that. And I just want to share some of them with you. So maybe if you're thinking about taking the class with us or Alliance Police Training or one of the myriad of other opportunities that you could get to train in a 3D world, not just standing on the line shooting at paper targets in front of you, some of these things might be worth thinking about. So the first thing that we see, and we saw it in a number of our students, and it was pretty funny, is the Groucho walk, the SWAT walk. And we see this a lot from guys who haven't spent very much time moving around with their guns in a 3D environment around people and space and things, right? When we just stand on the range and shoot. So what is a Groucho walk, right? I talk a lot about, you guys have seen a lot of my videos where I talk about tall optics and the heads up shooting stance, right? How I prefer to be, very heads up in my position. And so a Groucho stance would be the opposite of that, right? Very squat. And a lot of guys will get into their rifle just a little bit. Maybe they have a lower optic than me, but I'm talking about this whole exaggerated stance. And we saw a lot of students want to do that. Every time they would walk off the wall, they would go try to solve problems in the room, they'd be moving down the hallway, they would be doing it like this. And it causes a lot of problems, the Groucho walk. A couple problems it causes that should be pretty obvious to you is mobility. You, as an adult human being, have been walking for over 20 years. Some of you guys like 60 years, right? You've been walking a long time. And you don't do it like that, right? We just stand up and we walk places. And we can see this in our students. When they were doing things with the gun in a low carry position, they were talking, they were doing administrative tasks, they would do it upright, right? They'd be upright. They'd be doing a room report, hey, I have one bad guy down, 9 o'clock, I have an open door, 12 o'clock, I have dead space, 12 o'clock, on me, right? We're gonna move to the dead space at 12 o'clock. And everything would be normal. They'd be standing normal. They'd walk to each other normal. They'd stand next to each other normal. And as soon as the rifle would come up, and I had a number of students give me this feedback that by the end of the first day, their legs were gassed, right? And so by walking like that, by being tense and out of a traditional humanoid posture, we're putting a lot of extra stress on our muscles. We're tensing everything up and we're making everything tight. And we're gassing ourselves out unnecessarily. We're also limiting our mobility. We definitely don't move as fluid or natural in this, Groucho type position. Some other things that this does is as we crouch down, and especially as we crouch down with our chin down, which is typically how we see, we take away our peripheral vision. We reduce what we can see in the world around us. It also makes it harder to breathe. Just my fat ass sitting here talking to you guys, I'm struggling just because all the crouchy, right? It makes it harder to breathe. So now we are fatiguing our muscles faster than we need to. We're reducing our vision of the world around us, and we're making it harder to take in oxygen, which when we're dealing with stressful environments, again, I see, room clearing class for the first time is very mentally stressful. It taxes the processor. Oxygen is what relieves that stress, what calms that back down, what keeps the processor running cool, right? It's the coolant for your processor. And so now you're walking weird and it hurts your muscles. It takes away your vision and is slowing down your processor. So if you guys are thinking about CQB class, I want you to get on the flat range and I want you to shoot and I want you to move and I want you to do it from an upright position. I think you'll see a big difference. I think it'll matter. Some other stuff that we see a lot in people's first CQB class is mechanical offset. A lot of guys don't spend a ton of time training to shoot 10 yards and in with a rifle, right? It seems silly to get this giant stick that can kill from far, set it up with great optics and lasers and equipment so we can see out into 300 yards with it and then shoot at 10 yards and in. But but for sure, we've talked about this a ton here on our channel, is these tall optics that make a heads-up shooting position nice, that give us a good fighting stance to breathe and see the world. They have a tall mechanical offset, and we have to train that. We have a lot of students who want to put the dot exactly where they want the bullet to go, and at 10 yards and in, that's not going to work. You're going to have to account for your mechanical offset. This is something you should be doing on the flat range. The flat range is the place to go learn your offset, to shoot from a bunch of different distances, known distances to start, at a bunch of different size targets, right? What I'm not asking you to do is that any distance to know exactly where on a human head you should put your dot to get your rounds to enter between the eyes, right? That's not what I want you to do. I want you to know the height of your offset on any target at any distance. That takes a lot of time and training at the flat range at 3 yards and 5 yards and 7 yards and 10 yards, and it looks a little goofy, and other people are going to see you training with your rifle at 10 yards and in and think that's silly. But what I'll tell you is if the target is 100 yards away and you make an imperfect hit, that is better for you than when the target is 3 yards away and you make an imperfect hit, right? The closer the target is, the more perfect our hits need to be. The less time we have to make additional hits to fix our problems. So in our class, we give you 2 rounds, and that's not to say that you should only ever shoot lethal bad guy threats with 2 bullets. It's to give you 2 rounds. That if you can't do your best work in those 2 rounds, then you need to slow down, take your time, see where the dot needs to go to get the hit that you need, and make it happen, right? Like there's no speed at which you can go. You cannot miss fast enough to win a gunfight, right? You cannot make bad hits fast enough to incapacitate a target, right? So take the time that it takes to make good hits. But you got to know your offset, guys. Train this ahead of time. If you're going to a class to shoot in buildings at 5 yards, take the time to understand your offset. Safety manipulation. We see this a lot, and this comes from a couple different places. Lots of different opinions on safeties out there. You've already heard my opinion on ambi safeties and how that's not the safest, smartest way to go. I'll leave that there. But the other thing about safeties is a lot of instructors will teach that if you have the rifle up in your shoulder pocket, that you should have it on fire. And they do that because of speed, maybe, right? Like if the rifle's in my shoulder pocket and it's on fire and a target presents itself, I can just shoot it. That's true. That's 100% true. It's fast. It's too fast. The reason we don't teach that, right? What we teach is identify the target. See that there is a target. See if that target needs to be shot. If that target needs to be shot, present the rifle. Put the dot where the dot needs to be to put the bullets where the bullets need to go. Put the rifle on fire, send those rounds, right? If we are running around with our safety off, and at Alliance, they've done some studies on this, students who took their safety off every time the rifle came up versus students whose safety came on until the dot was on target, accounted for offset, and they were ready to shoot. And students whose safeties come off early, or students who want to walk around a shoot house with their safety off, or students who want to have the safety off the second it touches their shoulder, those students were 80% more likely to shoot somebody who didn't need to be shot. Now we're talking paper targets in a shoot house, right? But 80% is a significant deal, right? Shooting the wrong people is bad. That safety gives us one last layer of security, one last mechanism to defeat before we send rounds at a target. And before we do that, we have to have fully identified that target. We see a lot of times that students will, they'll dig their hard corner into the room. There'll be a target in front of them. The rifle will come up. They will shoot that target, and they will never have looked at their sights or the target. And they will see that target is a little girl holding a lollipop, and they just shot her, not in the face because they didn't even look at their sights. So there's a couple in her armpit, right? The safety has to be the last layer of security between you and shooting the wrong people. And it has to be a whole part of a target interrogation process, right? You come around the corner, you see that there is a target. A lot of people have a tendency, they come around the corner and they see there is a target and they immediately snap the rifle up into their face. And what this does is I now see that there is a person and I now have my rifle up here so I can deal with that person, but my rifle is now blocking my view of everything below their face and chest that I can see through my red dot, right? My rifle is now blocking my view of their hands and waistband, where tools could be or come from. And what else hangs out on waistbands or on necklaces, right? Like badges for detectives or undercover, right? A guy's trying to show you his badge on his belt. And so if we come around the corner and we see that there's a target, we have to have the discipline, we have to be professional enough to keep our rifle in a low ready, visually interrogate that target. If that takes white light, that's fine. Visually interrogate that target. See face, hands, waistband, wingspan, right? What's around this person? Now, if they need to be shot, if this person is a lethal threat, now my rifle comes into play. I account for offset, then I remove my mechanical safety, touch the trigger, and send 2 rounds. 2 aimed rounds, right? So the safety, instead of being the first thing that we defeat, needs to be the last thing that we defeat in a very intentional process of target interrogation. On the flat range, we really only have 2 measuring tools for our performance, right? We can measure our accuracy and we can measure our speed. And for sure in our community, the shot timer has become a very important part of training. And obviously we need to have skills that we can access on demand, right? We need to be proficient enough with our weapon to use it effectively at a speeds that actually get things done. But what we see as soon as students get off the flat range is we see that desire to be fast, it's not throttled. It's not throttled by the realities of the real world, right? The real world has lots of people in it that don't need to get hurt, that don't need to be muzzled. In the real world, we're working with a partner. We see all the time in a corner-fed room, I'll have a partner facing over there. I'll come in, he'll be at the hard corner, I'll be at the zero, he'll get in a gunfight, and people will they'll want to turn, but he's here, right? They'll want to turn to get in that gunfight with him because it's fast. But speed is only one metric. And professionalism has to trump the rush, the hurry, the desire to get in the fight, the desire to win or to be fast, right? We have to be professionals in this. We got to do the things right every time. We got to hit the carry positions. We have to move on line. We have to turn our safety off only after we've identified the threat, put our dot where it needs to be, right? So this is just a few things that we see a lot of times when we teach, the people's first class outside the flat range. Some things I would love you guys to think about as you're doing your flat range training and starting to think about how what we are ultimately training for is the real world, right? We're not training to stand on a line and shoot a bunch of paper targets on an up count from an instructor on a timer, right? And so think about how you manage your safety, how your low ready works, stand up tall. Think about how that stuff can impact, what a fight might actually look like for you, and go out there and get some training off the flat range, centrifuge training with their VCQB program, Alliance Police training, defensive elements. There's a bajillion places to go, right? But ultimately, you got to go get the training, and what you'll probably find is you have a couple of these scars, and the only way to work them out, the only way to smooth out these bumps is to get out there and train around people in real space. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, contact at Defense Mechanisms, hit up all our socials, roast me in the comments. You know how it goes. Hopefully you learned something. I'm sure I'll see you on the next one.